Welcome to Mild Moodcast, a podcast meant to explore mental health through the lens of another human hanging on by a thread. I'm Bianca, a registered mental health counselor intern, soon to be LMHC, here to chat about the topics we don't get enough of. So grab your headphones and let's dive into the crazy world of mental health. It's going to be a wild ride. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Mild Moodcast. I am so excited to be doing this episode today. And it's not even the episode. I just feel like I can't stop smiling. I don't know what's happening. And it's funny because I'm still under the weather. I've still been sick. But I just feel so happy. I don't know what's happening. And it's crazy because I was just looking at Adobe Audition because that's what I use to edit everything, and they changed it. So I'm staring at it and I'm like, I don't know where this is supposed to go. So of course I have my little intro or whatever. Now I'm in the habit of putting the intro in first and then recording from that going forward instead of recording everything and then having to drag it all out of my way. Not that you particularly care, but I just looked at it and they'll have different names. I'm like, what in the update? Oh, I don't know what happened, but whatever. Hopefully this goes as well as I need it to. And sorry for the jingling. That's my bracelet. I started to talk with my hands. But anyway, today's episode is called Anxious Attachment and the Fear of Abandonment, Healing the Wound. And you might be thinking to yourself, girl, why are you so happy when you're talking about anxious attachment? And the answer is, I don't know. I just had a surge of just excitement and feeling bubbly. I have no idea. But cool. If you needed to smile, maybe you got that from this. So, disclaimer. As always, while my podcast is meant to spark reflection and curiosity, it is not a replacement for therapy. If you're navigating heavy emotions or challenges, please reach out to a professional. Therapy is a safe space to process and grow. All right, so we're going to talk about something that I know so many of us struggle with: anxious attachment and the fear of abandonment. If you've ever found yourself feeling like you're too much, or if you've ever felt like you have to work overtime just to keep people in your life, or if the thought of someone pulling away makes you spiral into worst case scenarios, then yeah, we need to talk about this. Because anxious attachment isn't just about relationships. It seeps into everything. Our self-worth, the way we interpret people's actions, how we move through the world. And if we don't recognize it for what it is, we end up living in this constant state of trying to prove our value, chasing reassurance, of feeling like at any moment we could be left behind. And when I start a lot of these, I immediately go into the other parts of our life where you can see them, and there's a reason for that. Because a lot of times people think, well, it just stops here. Something like depression just stops here. And no, maybe you've never been able to recognize how it has affected you or where it shows up in your life. And that's a big part of why I give real world examples. And I want to make something really clear before we go any further. This is not a flaw. You are not broken for feeling this way. Anxious attachment is an adaptation. It's something you learned, probably when you were very young, but at some point you had to fight for security. But here's the good news. Just like you learned it, you can unlearn it. And today we're going to talk about exactly that. Where it comes from, how it affects you, and most importantly, how you start healing it. So first, let's define what we're actually talking about. Because anxious attachment isn't just being clingy or needy. Those are words the society throws around to shame people for having emotional needs. Buzzwords. Anxious attachment is when your sense of safety in relationships feels unstable. It's when deep down you don't really believe that love is consistent. That if you stop proving yourself, If you stop being useful, if you stop doing, then people will leave. Now, if you listen to last week's episode, this is like a direct connection to the who am I for other people conversation that we had for a moment. So, what are some signs of anxious attachment? How do I know? You need constant reassurance. Here's the kicker though, even when you get it, you struggle to believe it. You overthink small interactions. Someone takes longer to text back, and your brain is already writing a whole story about what that means. And honestly, for some people, their immediate thought is they're going to leave me. They're going to break up with me. They don't like me anymore. I'm not important. For other people, they get angry. They're a lot more likely to cuss you out. Not a good habit, by the way. But you are almost like pushed to respond or overdo. You feel like you're always working harder in relationships than the other person. You're afraid of asking for what you need because deep down, you think it'll push people away. You feel like your emotions are too intense and you don't want to burden people with them. If any of that feels familiar, just know you are not alone. This isn't just a you thing. This is a deeply human response to uncertainty in relationships. All right, so let's go deeper into the abandonment wound, because this is the core fear that drives anxious attachment. The fear of being left, the fear of being unloved, the fear of being forgotten. And if you guys have been like rocking with me since the start of season 2, I talked about this very early on as something that I had experienced. That was my outlook in every relationship. I had an abandonment wound. And even to this day, I look at it from a different perspective. It doesn't affect me in the same ways because, yes, it's possible to work out of it. But it's still something that is on my radar as I have to make sure that I move as my current self and not as my childhood wound. So let's talk about, why does abandonment feel like such a big deal, right? Because it's not just emotional, it's a nervous system response. If you grew up in an environment where love felt unpredictable, where people pulled away without explanation, where your needs weren't met consistently, your brain registered that as danger. So now, as an adult, even if you're safe, even if you're loved, your body still reacts as if abandonment is a life-threatening situation. That's called hypervigilance. So this is why even small things, small in air quotes that you can't see, like someone canceling plans or being a little distant, can send you into a full-blown emotional spiral. The brain doesn't see it as just a bad day. It sees it as a threat to your safety. So how does this show up in real life? You replay conversations over and over, trying to figure out what you did wrong. You feel like you have to fix the situation immediately, or else the person might leave. You go out of your way to be agreeable, even if it means sacrificing your own needs. And you stay in relationships longer than you should, because even bad love feels safer than no love. And listen, I want you to hear this. Your fear of abandonment is valid. It makes sense. But it doesn't have to control you forever. I look at the idea that, You feel like you have to fix something immediately, and you go out of your way to be agreeable, even when it means sacrificing your own needs. And I think about how truly miserable that is. Even if I know that I'm not in the wrong, even if my emotions are valid, and they are, if I bring something up, I'm a lot more likely to just put it by the wayside and say, never mind, it's okay. Because I feel like if I express my need, and I is a general I, just like you is a general you, I feel like if I express my need, then you might leave. So I sacrifice what I need for the person in front of me, and that is no life to live. Being a yes man for the sake of someone sticking around. So I'd love to talk about how to break the cycle, because I've painted this picture for you to know what this looks like. And I can only imagine some of the things that might be going through your head right now as you think of the ways that this has shown up for you. Because to tell you the truth, a lot of people don't like to even admit that that is the part that they play in a relationship. It hurts. I don't want to touch it. I don't like that. But when we learn how to break the cycle, we live authentically. And that is a huge, huge theme with my podcast, is learning to live authentically. So what do we actually do about this? Because awareness is great, but healing is the goal. I mean, you may already know this, right? So you're like, cool, yeah, I knew that, I could identify that. But what the heck do I do? Let's get into some real practical steps you can start taking. Step 1, and I feel like, man, I be driving this one home, I don't know. Learn to self-soothe. Some people are so resistant to this very first step. Because when I tell you ways to self-soothe, you're going to go, you have already said this like 50 times. Yeah, because there's a reason that I'm saying it. But we are so damn resistant to learning to self-soothe because you're like, ugh, I don't have time for that. Okay? We can't always control how other people show up. But what we can control is how we respond to the anxiety when it hits. And one of the biggest ways to do that is through nervous system regulation. You know, I don't just talk to talk. I talk because science backs it up. I know I talk about spirituality a lot, but that doesn't discredit anything that I'm discussing. I'm just connecting the two. So, ways to self-soothe when anxious attachment kicks in. Breath work. Slowing your breathing signals to your body that you are safe. And maybe this perception will help because, again, people were like, I don't want to do breath work. I don't want to do any breathing exercises. Okay. But recognize that when you slow your breathing, it's telling your brain and your body that you're all right. This is safe. Grounding exercises. Hold something physical like a stone or a piece of jewelry and remind yourself, I am here. I am safe. I am not in danger. Reassuring self-talk. Instead of spiraling, say, even if this person is distant right now, I am still loved. My worth is not dependent on their attention. And I feel like in every single one of these episodes, there's something that I always want to repeat. And damn it if it's not that last sentence. My worth is not dependent on their attention. Step 2. Build secure attachment within yourself. And if you notice, no one is making these decisions, is taking these actions for you. This is you doing the work within you. A huge part of healing anxious attachment is learning to Be the safe, consistent presence that you wish someone else had been for you. Be that person for you. So, what does that look like? Speaking to yourself with kindness instead of criticism. Validating your own feelings instead of waiting for someone else to do it. Reminding yourself that love is not something you have to earn. You deserve love simply because you exist. And I know that's not the first time that I have said that before. And I really just want to drive that home. And maybe, this episode feels like a challenge. And I want you to sit with why that is. Because I even have clients who you get off of the surface level with them sometimes and they push back significantly. And I always ask them, sit with yourself to try to figure out why that is, because it's not me. We could try to place the frustration on me. We can try to, say, oh, well, it's your fault for bringing up this topic, or you knew that I wasn't ready. But it has nothing to do with Bianca. So sit with it and ask yourself, why is it that I am resistant to these topics? And if this happened to be your first episode that you came in and listened to, would not recommend. I mean, each of my episodes can totally stand alone with the exception of the last two because they were part 1 and part 2. But I would recommend starting from the beginning so that you can kind of build through each topic. Because if you're at this episode with me and you've been here, today probably wasn't a shock for you. It was probably just like a confirmation or a, wow, I didn't know that there was, a word for that. Or that there are other people like me who are experiencing this and this isn't just a me thing. Because, the whole point of me talking about this is to normalize it. Because people don't. My favorite thing to say, and I've said it before and I will say it for the rest of forever, a closed mouth don't get fed. So if we don't talk about these things, then it feels like we're suffering alone. But outside of all of that, learning to talk to yourself to get yourself through things because no one is coming to save you. And I will always mean that gently when I say no one is coming to save you, not from a nobody cares standpoint. I don't want someone to save the parts of me that I need to build up. And that's not ego. That's having faith in who you are to change your narrative going forward. As children, as teens, as young adults, we have so many experiences that shape who we are. And this is just a review, right? If you've been listening, because I talk about this all the time. We can't help, per se, the things that we have been through. But we can work to change what this looks like today, tomorrow, and for the rest of forever. Healing anxious attachment is not about becoming perfect or never feeling anxious again, because that's not realistic. It's about learning to catch yourself before the spiral takes over. It's about shifting from reacting to responding. And that's still something that I have to do to this day. I'm not expecting myself to be perfect or to never feel anxious. Of course I am, because that is what's been in me forever. But once I learn how to self-soothe, once I learn how to apply these different actions, I start to use them if and when that comes up. So then the frequency slows down. Because I'm going to have interactions. I'm going to show up for myself. I'm going to make myself feel safe until I rewire my brain. It's called hypervigilance mode, as I believe I said a few minutes ago. When we're in hypervigilance mode, we're in danger. Our brain believes that we are in danger. So if I can learn to soothe, then my brain isn't gonna feel like I'm in danger every time I have one of those moments. I have a really good example of something that I think affects everybody, even if you don't have anxious attachment. When someone looks at you and says, or texts you and says, we need to talk, what happens to you physically? What do you think? What do you feel? Now, with that, if we're shifting from reacting to responding, reacting is starting to panic. Reacting is, oh my God, I think they're going to break up with me. And in reality, they could be saying, we need to plan the dinners for the week. I want to plan the next time I see you. I want to tell you that I got promoted at work. I want to plan for the next time I see you. I want to tell you about the fact that I got promoted at work. We have no idea what someone means when they use the words, we need to talk, but we will be so quick to say, please don't use those words. Because they put our body into hypervigilance mode. And we want to react instead of respond. Even on a much smaller scale, something like that can make you feel so panicky and honestly super real, because who the hell, we're so much more likely to be like, please just don't use those words. If you want to say something, hey, I want to talk about work later, or be a little bit more specific. And that's because we want to react instead of respond. I want you to sit with this. You were never too much. You were never unworthy of love. The way you've learned to survive does not define the way you get to live. If this resonated with you, I want you to take a second and reflect. What's one thing you want to start doing differently in your relationships? Even if it's just with yourself. I invite you to DM me your thoughts on Instagram. Comment on here. Let's talk about it. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share this episode with them. I appreciate you guys for listening. I always try to bring, real life examples and ways to break cycles to each of my episodes. And I want to remind you that, again, we are not perfect as people. So we can hear this and we can get super motivated and we can get excited, and you interact with someone and it doesn't go the way that you want it to. And that's okay, because you're learning. You're learning to pull yourself out of survival mode and not have your past define your future. And remember that 1% better is still better. I hope you guys have an amazing week. Thank you forever for listening. Bye, guys. Thanks for tuning in to Mild Moodcast. Remember, the conversation doesn't end here. If you have any burning questions or topics you'd like me to cover, don't hesitate to reach out. You can find me on YouTube at Mild Moodcast and Instagram at Mild Mood Therapy. Let's keep the conversation going and continue to explore the wonderful world of mental health together. Until next time, stay curious and keep smiling.